Hello all, I'm Dr. Neema Bhatt. I'm a bone marrow transplant physician here at Apollo Hospitals, Bannerghatta Road. Bone marrow transplant is a highly specialized and skilled procedure which helps patients recover from various blood disorders. Have you ever wondered what goes on behind these closed doors? Bone marrow transplants, as we know, happens in the transplant unit, but the transplant itself or the stay in the unit itself makes a small part of the journey, but a crucial part. So what actually goes on behind these closed doors? Let's find out. Let me take you inside Apollo's bone marrow transplant unit, which has been built with a lot of precision. The Apollo transplant unit is a safe space that's built with a lot of thought, scientific design, cutting-edge technology, especially to create a very safe space for our patients to undergo transplant, a safe recovery, so that they can head out on this journey of recovery from big disorders like blood cancers. Let us take a quick peek inside Apollo's BMT unit. As you see, it has to be labeled as a transplant unit. Entry is restricted because we try to maintain the highest aseptic precautions and make sure that only the necessary people enter into the transplant unit, which is usually limited to the required staff, which is our nurses, the patient's doctors who was taking care of him, and a few very limited housekeeping personnel required to maintain the sterility and aseptic precautions of the place. Let's take a look inside our transplant unit. Bone marrow transplants put patients at a very vulnerable state. They are extremely immunocompromised because of the high-dose chemotherapy and radiation we put them through. Bone marrow transplants put patients at a very vulnerable space. They go through a lot of high-dose chemotherapy and radiation, and before their immune system recovers from the stem cells that they receive from the donor, they need a very safe space where they're away from the risk of infections. Hence, we built a fortress where infections cannot even come close. Although this unit may look quite simple, we have taken a lot of care and precision and put a lot of scientific technology behind designing it. So what is so special about this unit? First of all, as you saw, it's restricted entry. It is usually in one corner of the hospital where the foot traffic is very less. The number of people who enter the unit is extremely minimal and directly supervised by the transplant director. Then we have stainless steel wash basins, as it is easier to sanitize and clean these basins right next to the nurses' station. So there is no way that the nurses can forget to sanitize and clean their hands before they enter the patient's room. After this, we have something called HEPA filters, which is something it's a system that's used to make sure that the patient's room is maintained in an extremely sterile fashion. What makes these rooms so special? Let's take a quick look. So we have what is called high efficiency particulate air filters that is installed separately in each room for every patient. This creates a positive pressure ventilation. What is the meaning of this? As you see, there is a pressure gauge that makes sure that each room is maintained at a particular pressure. Usually the pressure is between 0 to 5. What this ensures is that when you push the door, there is always a gush of air that comes out, ensuring that infections do not enter the room easily. So if you look at the HEPA filter inlets, those inlets are the ones that let air out at a force, and then this air gushes out of the room so that neither particles nor infections nor bacteria is able to enter the room easily. If you look at the way the bed is placed, it is all centered on the patient. The HEPA filter is on the side but works in cleaning the entire room. The patient has a dedicated space. They have their own mattress, their own bed, their own cardiac table. There is usually no mixing between the patient's personal belongings with another patient as opposed to another ward. Each patient also has their own nurse, ensuring that cross-contamination or cross-infections is kept at a minimum as much as possible. As you see, every patient bed is constantly monitored with a separate monitor and a dedicated nurse calling bell. Why is this so important? The post-transplant period is actually quite a rough phase where the patient goes through quite a few side effects. And at this point, we make sure to monitor the patient's vitals 24/7. So every minute, every second counts. And whenever there is an alteration from normalcy, we would like to pick it up at the earliest so that early actions can make sure the patient has a safe recovery. To ensure that there is limited entry of personnel into the transplant unit, to maintain the highest amount of sterility, we take small steps like ensuring that any materials that need to enter the transplant unit actually comes through this pass box. So this is connected to the outside corridor where necessary things like food, medications, other consumables, your dressing trays, all of those things can actually be delivered from the outside part of the hospital into the unit just through a passage box without actually requiring the person to enter the unit. This makes sure that our nurses don't need to leave the unit for anything, but at the same time, everything that's required to take care of the patient is delivered right at their doorstep. At Apollo Hospitals, we don't simply perform transplants. We ensure to create a safe environment where recovery thrives, and safe recovery is the major priority for our team. With cutting-edge infrastructure, breakthrough technology, top-notch medical care, and a team that truly cares, we at Apollo are redefining bone marrow transplants in India. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Neema Bhatt, on this tour of our transplant unit.